Hello, beautiful souls. You guys miss me? I know it takes me a while to make videos. I put a lot of details in my work, so that's why it takes me a little bit longer to upload videos more frequently. I will be sharing some tips on how to layer paper on your clay pieces that are not flat. But first I want to show you the new molds that I created. I'm not going to show you the molds. I'm just going to show you, I'm going to give you tips on how, when you have an object and you want to create a mold for it. And there are things that might hinder you making the molds because of the piece that you're using. For instance, I made a mold out of these scissors that Sonia had gifted me. And they were thin, so it's going to be a little bit difficult to make a mold out of that, especially if you want it to be sturdy, because there are holes here. And then, I ended up cutting a hole here once I molded the clay into the mold. I ended up cutting that, so it makes it a little bit more fragile. So what I've done is I couldn't put these back to back because of these lumps that were here, so it wouldn't lay flat. So they were sanded down, and then I was able to put them back to back flat. And I also put foam because they weren't quite touching. And then this is the result of the clay piece. So I created the mold, and then I used, this is air dry clay. This is Polyform air dry clay. And then, let me show you the other two that I did as well, that I had to put two together because it was thin. So I made a mold out of these hand mirrors. And again, I had to put them back to back. This one I didn't have to sand anything. And again, I had to add double-sided foam because there was a really big gap here. And the result of those, they came out like this once I molded the clay into the mold. I think they turned out pretty good. Another tip is there are such beautiful, beautiful filigrees, but they're like paper thin. They're really, really thin. Let me show you one here that is so thin. And even if you use resin, it's not going to work because it is so thin. You can't really mold this. It's paper thin. So what I've done is, these were gifted to me by Sonia. And since she gifted me 8, 4 in gold and 4 in silver, I added some double-sided tape on these parts and just stuck them together so that I can create thickness. So that's another tip. If you have these beautiful filigrees and you want to make a mold out of it, here's another example where I layered them. I took a part where I looked at the filigree and I looked to see where there's enough space for me to add double-sided tape, the thin one, the thin double-sided tape, like score tape. And I cut a sliver here and a sliver for here, and I just kept stacking them. These are 8 and these are 8, and of course these are 8 because there's 4 gold and 4 silver. And the result of creating a mold for that is this. Look how lovely these turned out of that, out of this. And it's flat in the back, so I paper pieced that because these are going to be charms. It could be charms or ornaments, either or. Look how they turned out. These are a little bit tricky because of the holes, and you don't want to press it in too deep, because once the silicone starts pushing up into the holes, if it pushes in too far, when you try to remove it, it does rip. So you got to be very, very careful. That's another thing that you got to look out for. Okay, so let me show you how I embellished some of them. Okay, I'll show you the scissors first. I did just paper piece the back of this one. I have not decorated this one yet. But for this one, I did. And what I've done here, because of all these intricate, you know, pieces, I used napkin. Here. This is the only napkin I can find in my, you know, neighborhood locally. And it's really not my style. It's not, you know, this is more vintage. And it's really not my style. But it's what I had, so I used it. And I did paper piece it, and then I also used this mousse from Nuvo. You know, I rubbed some of it, and then I also paper pieced the back, and I did this first. And here is how I decorated the butterfly. And again, I left this one white, and I just rubbed that Nuvo mousse that Sabrina from the S Factor Studio had gifted me in the Not So Secret Santa swap. And I will put something here to hide, you know. I don't really care for that. It's not finished. But this could be hung for people who do shabby chic Christmas or holiday. They can hang these on their trees, especially if it's a mini tree. So I created them as ornaments. They could be a charm as well. And then for the leaf, this is how I decorated it. I love this one. This one is really shabby. I forgot to add glitter to that. Oh, and the sparkle that you see here on the butterfly. Let's see if the light can capture that sparkle. Okay, I used Glamour Dust by Deco Art. This was gifted to me by Sonia, who is my friend. Sabrina's my friend too. I don't want to exclude her. She is my friend. She and I are getting to know each other, and I absolutely adore her. This is how I decorated the mirrors. They pretty much similar. And I did add, you know, because when you mold the clays, it looks like this. You know, it's a blank canvas on both sides. So I paper pieced that as well. And although this is very intricate here, you can still add your pretty paper. And since, you know, this could be a charm or an ornament, you know, if it flips this way, it'll still be pretty on that side, and I will add something there too. And again, I sprinkled this Glamour Dust on the mirror as well. I hope the camera's picking up all that glitter. It's really pretty. I love that glitter because it's super fine, especially when you're making small ornaments or embellishments. And then I created this dress form I already had, but look how I decorated them. I actually created my own. I molded my own dress form out of clay, and then what I've done here, it is here it is plain. And then what I've done after that, you know, because I used polymer clay, I baked it, and then I created a mold out of it. But this is how I decorated these. And these are not finished, but I needed to show you this one because this one right here is my absolute favorite. But it's not finished. It doesn't have the flowers yet or anything like that. And then there are these two. The first thing we want to do is, before we decorate the front of our clay pieces, it doesn't matter what clay pieces you have. I'm pretty sure you have some clay pieces that are not flat on the top, but it's always flat on the back unless you have the 3D molds. But the first thing you're going to do is you're going to paper piece the back of your clay pieces. And I have two hand mirrors here, but I'm going to show you how to paper piece this one because this is more intricate on the edges. When paper piecing the back, you can use either designer paper that's in cardstock or designer paper that's almost like copy paper. Like this paper pad, for instance, is so it's a little bit thicker than copy paper, but it's not cardstock at all. It's, you know, it's just regular paper, like copy paper, the consistency of copy paper. So for the back, I highly suggest cardstock because your back pieces are not always going to be flat, and if you use this paper that's, you know, like copy paper weight, you're going to see all the lumps in the back. But if you use cardstock designer paper, you won't see those lumps. So I'm just going to use this one that I have here. You use what you have. I'm just going to go ahead and, okay, I'm going to use this part here. So you want to saturate the back of your pieces with any wet glue you have. If you're going to use Fabri-Tac glue, you do have to spread it with your fingers. And you want to make sure you get all the edges. That's very important. And of course, you're going to, you know, give this a little time to dry. It is wet glue. And before you do that, make sure you color, you know, your clay pieces the color that you want. Only in the front, you don't have to color the back. I'm going to cut as close as possible, but it doesn't have to be precise. And for the remainder, we are going to need an X-Acto knife for this part here. So you're just going to cut off the excess. And you're just going to follow along the silhouette of your clay piece. And be careful because I just sliced a little bit off. Oopsie. It's a little bit, you know, it's more challenging to do this on camera because I usually have to, you know, be above, I mean, not above, I have to hover over my clay piece so that I can see what I'm doing. And it's not going to be perfect, and that's fine. You see how I still have some pieces there showing? I'm going to show you how to get rid of that. For the parts that are sticking out, you sand that off. I'm using just a regular nail file. You don't want to press too hard because you don't want to file down the clay too much. It's still going to happen, especially if you're using air dry clay. This right here is polymer clay. So I'm angling the file. I'm not totally going like this. I'm filing it in an angle this way. Sometimes I like to do it this way so that I can see that it's actually filing off. So you don't really see it in the front anymore. And then for these little, because this has a little scallop, this has a scallop going on there. I go in between those grooves. And that looks good to me. So if you're gonna glue your clay pieces on your projects, then you can skip that part. You know what, before we do that, I'm gonna go ahead and do this one as well, because this one is more intricate. Same way, you want to saturate your mirror, not your mirror, the clay piece that you're working with. And this is a great opportunity to use your scraps. Again, you're going to cut as close as you can. Okay, and again, you're going to cut as close as you can. For these parts here, I just cut it in a V. And I'm not even cutting, you know, rounded. I'm just cutting it straight. Because the file, I will file it round. So I don't got to concern myself with that. And it's not going to be perfect, even this way, but it's close enough. And it's good enough, even after you embellish it. Makes it look much nicer. Okay, again, I'm going to go in between these V parts. I missed this one. And here's where I will file it round. Just, you know, for the parts that have, you know, like a dent, an indent or a V, you just do that. You go in between one side and then the other side until you don't see the paper anymore. And then, of course, this is going to be the result. That's going to be the result. And it's nice and clean in the front. So that's the trick to doing that, as opposed to tracing it and then cutting out. That's tedious, and it takes much longer. It's too much work. Now I'm going to show you how to paper piece on this not flat clay piece. Or for this one, I just cut out a circle. This size, it's a 7/8. And I just cut out, if you have a 7/8 punch, perfect. If not, I did use one of these. And it tells me that this circle here is 7/8. So I just placed this on my designer paper, you know, where I wanted to show, like, if I wanted the rose. And I trace around it, and then I free cut it. Oh my God, I can't talk. I cut it free-handed. Get it together, girl. So, and that you can use cardstock as well. You don't need to use lightweight designer paper. For this, you have to use lightweight designer paper. Or even copy, you know, if you do digitals, you can, you know, you print out your digital and on your copy paper, which is probably even better because it's much thinner than this, but this will do the job. This does the job. Obviously, I've done it here. Okay, and since these are small, you want to use prints that are small. I'm just going to go ahead and use this one here. Again, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to cut out roughly, I'm gonna cut it here. I'm just gonna cut out, you know, like a small sheet. I think I better zoom out a bit. Oopsie. Okay. Yeah, I think that's much better. Okay. Again, you do want to saturate this. You can use Mod Podge as well, even for the back. I'm just going to use regular white glue. And you want to lay your piece down there. Give it a little time to grab. And I am going to cut, I'm going to slit where the waistline is on both sides. And I'm going to fold this over. And I'm going to cut again. For both sides. It's sticking out, you know, more, but we're going to trim that off again using the file method. Now this is going to be a little bit of the tricky part. Okay, see how it's not going to lay quite flat there? I'm going to slice here in the corner. I'm going to slice here in the corner. And I'm going to tuck this one in. And this right here, when dressmaking, this is called a dart. So I am creating a dart here. And there is going to be some of the clay showing here, but how I remedied that was I added ribbon on both sides. So there's always, where there's a will, there's a way. There's always a way to get around something. And you just, you know, cut following the silhouette of your clay piece. And if you cover your clay pieces with trims, if you know, if there's little flaws here and there, those will be covered anyway. So you don't got to worry about that. And I think it's better to use Mod Podge with this because it stayed much better than this white glue. I don't even know why I use this white glue. Okay. And again, you just sand off any extra pieces and it comes right off. Just be careful because you do have paper back here too, and you don't want to sand those parts off. And there you have it. Okay, that's how you do that. I hope this helped you guys, especially for beginners. I like both. I like the, you know, if I need to do a project you know, the same day, then I would use polymer clay. But if I can wait a couple of days, then I would use air dry clay, because it does take a while for that to dry, cure. Another tip, you could also cover your clay pieces on both sides like I did here, if you want them both decorated with designer paper. And I've taken some wooden buttons that it's not shabby enough for me. I don't use these colors. I wouldn't use that color. So I've also paper pieced them as well. And what this does too, it hides the holes of the buttons, as you can see here. So that's another tip. You can use the buttons that, don't throw them out, repurpose them, add designer paper. And these you can use the thin designer paper, like happy weight paper, because it is completely flat and there won't be any lumps. This one I used, and look how small this one is. This one I did use this design paper pad that is, you know, paperweight, and it worked out just fine. Okay, so with that being said, all is well. Let's share, be fair, be filled with love, and love one another. Take good care, everybody.